Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana has proposed requiring public officials to release their health records when announcing their plans to run for re-election, similarly to how candidates will release their tax records, wants them to release their health records to show that they are fit to serve in the office that they're running for. But don't give him too much credit yet, because the person he thinks is setting a good example in this regard is Mitch McConnell. So from USA Today, Cassidy praised McConnell for handling his health situation, quote, perfectly, and said those notes should be an example for other candidates' transparency on their health. Shouldn't there be transparency? Shouldn't President Biden, for example, release a full kind of neurological evaluation of his cognitive ability and whomever else? Cassidy said, do what Mitch just did. There was total transparency, which, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but there isn't a doctor's note alive that can convince me that what we see in this video is perfectly fine. Do we have the video?
Okay,
that's okay. What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator Benny.
Yep.
I'm sorry, that man who has locked eyes with the Grim Reaper standing in the back of the room. You cannot convince me that the simple doctor's note that nothing happened there, that he's completely and totally fine. And on top of that, I'll also add that I think that there are some serious issues with demanding people present you with the full workup of their health. Of course, that's not necessarily what Senator Bill Cassidy was proposing, but there does become issues with what we saw with John Fetterman's campaign. And ableism became a huge part of the conversation because so many people were they refused to try to understand that he's going to have to do things a little bit differently. That doesn't mean he's incapable of doing them, which I think also raises an issue. But I mean, the conversation really should be about our aging members of Congress, the ones who have clearly demonstrated an inability to execute their roles. And I don't think there's an issue with questioning Biden's, capability, his, cognitive awareness. Or we see that Nancy Pelosi has just decided she's going to run again. I mean, one of the questions that comes up for me is, why do you want to do this? You just to retire, just enjoy your retirement. Just take a day, just take some time off. Just enjoy the end of your life, with the loved ones surrounding you. I don't understand this desire to continue to run. And of course, it's ironic that in the moment when Mitch McConnell again locked eyes with the Grim Reaper and watched his future death apparently, and saw burning like pits of hell that's coming towards him, or whatever it was that was happening in that video, they were asking him if he's going to run for re-election in 2026. I mean, I hope to God that's not the case. And I have trouble feeling sorry for Mitch McConnell as we saw, one of his aides come over and, it feels like elder abuse at a certain point, but I still struggle to create that emotion of sympathy or empathy with someone who's just done so much objective evil in this world, but it feels wrong. And apparently I'm not the only person who feels that way because, and I actually don't agree with this, but let's pull up this headline. It says over 75% of voters want maximum age limit for elected officials, polls show, and most of them wanted it around 60 to 70 years old. Now, Senator Turner, I actually don't agree with that because I think that we see in someone like Bernie Sanders. I mean, I just watched a video of him throwing a baseball with one of his grandkids, and the ball comes at him, he just catches it like I couldn't do that. I'm 25 years old. I wouldn't be able to catch it like that. So we see people in Congress who are at that age still capable, and they still have, they feel compelled, they feel like they have a duty. There's still things they have to accomplish and they're physically able to. But we also see the flip side of that with people like Mitch McConnell. We saw it with Dianne Feinstein that at a point it was just cruel watching what was happening with her, she was, being forced to continue to do.
Yeah, it is cruel and unusual punishment, Ray, and it is elder abuse at a certain level. That's what it is. But we know why some of these people refuse to just do something else. It's 3 reasons: power, power, power. Those 3 reasons. Because why else at that stage in your life wouldn't you go on to do something else? And the key word is to do something else. There are plenty of older American, or older people, I should say, all over the world who are still very spry. So I agree with you. I don't agree with some arbitrary age limit. Who gets to decide? These people who are polling or putting that out there, who gives you the permission to make that decision for people? Senator Sanders is a great example of somebody that is still out there spry. There are many, there are others out there, but there does come, more than one thing can be true at once. There comes a moment where folks have to analyze their lives and decide, make a determination whether or not the positioning that they are in, especially when you are elected to office, and especially if that office is on a federal level, whether or not the rigor of the job, the things that are expected of you, whether or not that still meshes well with what you may be enduring at this stage of your life. And if all of us live long enough, it's going to happen to us all. That's why I would be the last person to say that just because of age, but given some of the things that he or Senator Diane are enduring right in our faces. President Biden, right in our faces, does cause pause and does absolutely call the question. I wanna make another point. Even babies die, young people die, 20 somethings, 30, 40, 50s. So death is not just something that's relegated to people who are of a more seasoned age. And we must never ever forget that. But mental faculty and capacity is another measure, not just age. And I'm glad you gave Senator Fetterman as another example, who has been very open about some of the things that he is enduring. And I think that is a good conversation that we should have in this country as we try to judge or try to make sense of what people are going through. But absolutely calling the question on these folks who have displayed a type of incapacity at certain moments is not out of the realm of possibility. It's right. And it's not ageism, because there's some people who just want to throw older people out. I'm not for that either, because again, the one thing that all of us will have in common, or we have in common, there's a generation ahead of us and there's generations behind us, everybody. That's called the cycle of life. But clearly, surely what happened to Leader McConnell is very clear what is happening. Surely what Senator Dianne Feinstein is going through is clear. Surely what President Joe Biden is enduring right now is crystal clear. And none of their supporters can try to convince the American people to not believe our lying eyes.
Absolutely. And it is just, to end on this, it's sad to see this when we know that there's so many, elderly folks in this country who are being forced to work late into their lives. They don't get to enjoy a retirement because of, a financial situation, and thank God we have policies like Social Security, and that's why it's so imperative that we bolster them, that we, protect them, because it is Medicare, Social Security are the policies that #1 contributors to elderly people not having to live in abject poverty. But so many people have to work really late into their lives just to get by. And we see these senators who don't. Objectively, they do not have to work this late into their lives. The only reason they're doing it is because of power, and they're not doing anything for their fellow elderly people with that power. It is sad.
Right, that point right there. Sorry to jump in on you, but that point right there. What are they doing with this power? And on a certain level, this is selfishness. Let's just call it what it is.
Absolutely, definitely selfish. I saw some people in the chat saying, well, we were doing this, it's selfish, it's sad. And yeah, definitely no one could accuse Mitch McConnell of ever doing anything for his fellow man. So all for himself.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.